Hi, my name is Sabine Reich and this is a short video blog for my students introducing them to the SPSS environment. In this video blog I use SPSS 21 on a Mac. However, if you use SPSS on a PC in an older or even newer version starting 2014, this should not be a problem as the menu stays fairly the same throughout development and is exactly the same across the platforms. Here I've opened SPSS and you're first off prompted with a startup window. In this window there are the recently used data sets available and easy to access. You can see here I've been doodling around with my dissertation data and a podcast data set. In your case on the lab computers, or if you open SPSS for the very first time, this should be empty. On the right hand side, however, you can see first of all the option of tutorials, which I'm not familiar with, but feel free to try them out. Beneath that or below that, you can find type in data, which is our, goal basically. So you can go on type in data and press OK, but you can also press cancel and the exact same thing will happen. You end up at this window, which is the data editor. Up here, the whole file system and menu bar is pretty standard for a Windows-based application. So at the file menu, you can either open or open a new file or window of those four kinds. Now, the most important ones for our purposes will be the upper three, so data, syntax, and output. What you see in the background on my laptop is the data window, the data editor, which is the core soul and heart of SPSS. The output window I'm not going to open at this point because SPSS will open it automatically for you whenever you ask it to compute a function for you. In the background, automatically my syntax window opened up, which shouldn't happen in your case. The syntax window looks like a text editor, and it is basically a code-based command center for SPSS, which will allow you to use code to commute various functions. So this is what we're dealing with, the data editor, and I want to direct your attention down here where you can see that the data editor has actually two separate views, and this is very confusing for my students, especially if they follow me along in class on SPSS. The problem usually is that they are on the wrong view. Now, next to the data view, which is very much like an Excel sheet, I'm switching here to the variable view, and the variable view is basically a list of your variables, a list of all the concepts you've turned into variables, made them measurable, and included them in your questionnaires. Now, whenever you want to transfer the data from your questionnaires into SPSS, you should go ahead and make a list of them and define them in here first. So in variable list, I want to go ahead and use some example variables just to show you the most important properties that you should be aware of and that you should define before you start. By now, my students should be familiarized with my obsession with really bad 70s, 80s, and 90s hard rock music, and so I'm going to use variables from an imaginary study that looks at people's liking for hard rock music. You can see now that I'm going to use sex as a common social science variable as an example for the first variable, and for variable name you want to find a short abbreviation of your variable name. In case of sex, that's not a problem, and only 3 cases. If you press enter, you see SPSS will fill out all the other columns by itself on a default basis. Our next column, type, asks us for the type of data that we're going to use for this variable. Most likely in quantitative research, you're going to use numeric values which are assigned to a theoretical concept. I'm going to use the other example variables later to explain the other type of data that are possible. Our next column asks for the width, and this is a little confusing as it's not about the width of the column, it's about the digits that your variable will have. So 8 is the default setting, and this should be fine for most social science variables. If you measure a variable with a lot of decimal points, you want to increase the number here in the width column. This brings us directly to the column decimals, and it's all about how many digits are displayed after the decimal point in your data view. Now, per default, SPSS puts in 2 decimal digits. However, I think that can be very chaotic for large data sets. Most of our values will not be able to actually take fractions of a natural number. For example, sex can only be 1 or 2, not 1.2 or 1.3. So I would highly recommend to put in a 0 for decimals for all the variables that cannot be fractions of a natural number. Next up, there's the label. And let me start with a quick reminder about the variable name, where I told you earlier that you should use a short abbreviation that helps you to identify a specific variable amongst a list of others. And you're really restricted in terms of the characters you can use for a variable name. On the other hand, the label is there to allow you to put in a note on the specific content of your variable. Here you can be very elaborate. You might want to put in the question or the wording of an item as it appeared in the questionnaire to help you later along the lines to remember what each item was about. Now, sex is a very easy variable, so I'm not going to be elaborate in the label, but you can see me using that feature later. The value labels are parallel to the variable labels and allow you to specify what your numeric values meant, so what theoretical concepts they belong to. We had 1 and 2 for the variable sex, and you opened a little subsection and put in the value and the label, and then you have to press the add button. So both of the numeric values with their descriptions appear in that little white middle section there. And after that, you may press OK. Next up are our missing values, and missing values are really important. They can cause you a lot of pain and sorrow in the future. So you really want to take care to always define them for each variable. Missing values means that whenever for some reason you don't have the answer of a participant, you can enter this code, and SPSS will know by that code that this value is missing, and this person should be excluded for the analysis at hand. Now, the value of your missing value is really dependent on what your dataset looks like, but you should usually try to find a value that is not used by any other variable as a regular value. This means numbers like 99 or 999 are something that is commonly used. Columns is just another feature about how your data view window or data editor window should look. So I'm not going to mess around with. I want to direct your attention to the measures. The options here are nominal, ordinal, and scale, and you're familiar with nominal and ordinal already. Scale is nothing else than SPSS's way of saying it's a metric measurement. I want to show you some other variable types SPSS can deal with, and first of all I'm using a numeric open answer. That is basically a question that asks participants for quantity. And I am asking participants about the number of hard rock CDs they own at home. So using NRCD as a shortage for number of CDs, for the variable name, our variable type is obviously numeric again, because as our previous variable, our data will be numbers from 0 to, I don't know. For the width and the decimals, we can stay the same. There are no half CDs, so we can expect that there are only full numbers without decimals. As a variable label, I'm just typing in what it's about, and this is a number of hard rock CDs owned. Next up, value labels, and for open answers, especially numeric open answers, in this case it's not necessary. If you try to recall, the value labels hold a list of the numeric values our variable can take, and their corresponding theoretical increments of our construct. So for example, a stronger political view and a weaker political view in some direction. In case of number of CDs, our value is basically a quantity, which is why we don't need a value label assigned here. And you see I've already switched to the more interesting part, the missing values. And to determine a missing value, you have to think about the possible range of answers your participant pool would have to your question, and choose a value that is outside of that range. I've chosen 999, which is, given the fact that you are all born past 1990, a very unlikely quantity of hard rock CDs you would have at home. And finally, the measures. As we have a quantity here for that open answer item, it is obviously a metric measure, and we put in scale for that. The next question I want to show you here is a Likert type item, because it's one of the most broadly used item types in social science research and psychology. They usually consist of a statement that is either in the first person or word as third person statement, and participants can then signal how closely the statement fits their own personality. A first person statement that I could use here is I enjoy profanity in rock music, or a third person item could be profanity in rock music is good or bad. Fill in whatever you like. Participants are usually offered answer options that range from 1 to 5 up to 1 to 11. Now, as I said, my example item is I enjoy profanity in rock music, and I'm gonna, as a short name, I'm gonna use profanity. If I have a lot of, new items or single item questions, I try to use like a keyword that helps me to identify it. As I said, participants are offered a scale from 1 to 5 in my case, and we're going to use those numbers in the data set. So it's going to be a number, again, so numeric, it's a numeric variable for SPSS. Since it is a single item and the participants cannot say, I enjoy profanity in rock music, applies 4.5 times to me, and they can only use whole values. There's no need for decimals. In the label then you can go a little further, and I use the label usually to put in the whole item or the whole statement. I enjoy profanity in rock music. Okay. The next important thing really is to is the value or the value labels for Likert scale items, and you really want to define them carefully in each and every one of them, because in 2 months' time you want to be able to still know what a low number meant and what a high number meant. Also, when designing your questionnaires, and I'm sure we're going to talk about this at a different point, but I'm going to say it here again, you want to make sure that lesser values, smaller concepts, weaker concepts go with smaller numbers or smaller values, whereas stronger, higher, bigger, and better concepts go with the higher numbers. So I'm going to use does not apply at all, so the disagreement for the lower values does not apply at all, at 2 does not apply, 3, the middle section is usually the undecided one, so undecided, or they don't care. 4 is does apply. Oops. 5 apply. So wait. Now this is a really vague wording here. You want to make sure that the wording is consistent throughout the questionnaire and fits your actual statements. Okay. Now, on a scale from 1 to 5, it's pretty easy to find a missing value. You could use 9, which would not be a problem. However, since we're gonna go with 99 from up here, I would recommend, unless it's absolutely necessary as for the number of hydroxides owned, you want to stay with 1 missing value number. You want to do that especially when you're not interested in why people didn't give an answer. If you don't need to differentiate between the missing values, it's best to stick with 1. Likert type scales are ordinal scales. And I'm pointing this out here because in psychology and media and communication studies in particular, they are often treated as metric scales. So researchers assume that the participants assume the same difference between 1 and 2, 2 and 3, 3 and 4, and 4 and 5. That is the grounds for treating them as a metric scale. And I'm going to stick here with my discipline's common usage as a quasi-metric scale. This has the benefit of allowing us way more analytical details later on than an ordinal scale would allow us. Next, I want to show you what it would look like if you need to enter a date. And this is usually just important for studies where participants take part several times. So this is just an example in case you need it. The date is usually a variable that you can get rid of at the end of your data analysis once your data set is all clean. But I just want to show it to you because it is a different variable type. And you can see that here. I can open this and change it to date instead of numeric variable. From the options you see here, date, numeric, dollar, and string are the only ones that are interesting. And if you open date, you have several options as to how your date would look like. And you can see here, I've chosen the American way of the date, month, day, and year, always with 2 digits. As for the width, SPSS adjusts that to our format of the variable type, and we won't need decimals. Then I just put in a label that is more clear for our variable. This variable won't need values, but if you want to define a missing value on the next column, you have to make sure that your missing value is in the same format as the variable, as you can see here. Finally, the date obviously is a metric scale, so put in as measurement scale. And that's it for the date variable. In the last example, I want to look at questions that have written open answers. For example, what's your favorite hard rock band? And you can imagine that none of the researchers would know all the hard rock bands that there are all over the world, so we give the participants a line and they can write down the name of their favorite hard rock band. So, band, and then you have to change the variable type, because whenever you don't directly convert a concept into a numeric value, and you want to write actual letters into SPSS, this qualifies as a string variable. String variable, I'm pointing this out because it's not the most obvious connection. This is, next to numeric, the most often used, or most commonly used variable probably for the studies you are interested in. Of course, automatically there are no decimals. The width is adjusted. I'm going to put in a question here. What is your favorite band? Okay. Of course, there are no values. I mean, you could make a infinite list of hard rock bands from the 70s, 80s, 90s, and the millennium years. And whenever something is named, press on that value, but it's probably much easier to fill it out and assign values after the fact. So right now, we're not going to have values. However, we can have a missing value, and it's going to be a nominal variable. All string variables are by default nominal variables because they only differentiate between Bon Jovi and Journey, basically. Okay? Okay, I'm going to save this again. So these are the variables we're going to use, and we've got 5 different variables, and I want to switch over to the data view, and you can see that SPSS is so kind as to show them up here. Also here you see, don't choose a long variable name. Choose something quick and easy to get. This makes it obvious the column always is a variable. The lines, however, they are all individuals. They are all participants in our studies. And their line holds all their answers. We asked them 5 questions, so one line has 5 numbers, and those are the values of their answers. And it's really important that this logic, lines, participants, columns, variables, does never change. In Excel, you also have the same logic. Columns for variables, lines for participants. So obviously this space I have marked right here is the answer of participant 1 to the question, what sex are you identifying with? So let's say this person answers 1, which means female in our case. This lady owns 7 hard rock cities, is very undecided about profanity in rock music, and she answered our questions on October 25th in 2013. And her favorite band is Journey. Now, here you can see I can't go on typing the name of Journey because we have 6 letters in right now. In this case, you go back to variable view, and you can see it here. You want to go here and put in 20. I mean, there are probably names of names that are above 20 letters, but let's just hope that's not going to happen. And that's what I forgot to do beforehand, but it's pretty easy, nice to show you what's the problem. Journey. Okay, so now you can type in what's journey. Let's put in another participant. A guy has 56 hard rhapsodies, is positively fond of profanity and hard rock. We did a small study on one day in October in 2013, and his favorite band is Machine Head. Because, you know, just for the lack of any other idea. Another guy. What the data will look like at some point of your study. And it's gonna add up and add up and add up. Alright, that's it. That's my first video cast. I hope you liked it, and it helps you as a little in-pocket knowledge whenever you get stuck in SPSS again. And I hope I see you guys soon in another video cast or in my course.